The line up top in pink, that's 30-year fixed rate mortgages. The blue line on the bottom is 10-year Treasury yield. The U.S. 10-year Treasury yield and mortgage rates have traded similarly for the past 35 years, where the 10-year Treasury was at a rate about 2% below mortgage rates. So mortgage rates are about 2% higher than the 10-year Treasury. Look, somewhere between 1.75 and 2. It's not exact, but you can see the chart for 35 years. It's pretty darn close, right? Until now. What has happened? Instead of 2% above the 10-year, it is now 3% above the 10-year. Whoa. Why did that happen? It's because the Fed has caused the Fed funds rate to rise so much. They've risen it above the 10-year Treasury. So now 30-year fixed rate mortgages aren't 2% above the 10-year Treasury. They're 2% above the Fed funds rate. Let's take a look at that. This is something that has happened only 5 times in the past 40 years, where the pink line on the bottom, the Fed, has caused rates to rise so much. Now, remember, the Fed funds rate, that's a short-term rate. That's an overnight lending rate. The 10-year Treasury, well, the 10-year Treasury, I'm going to tie my money up for 10 years. So I deserve a better return. And you usually do for most of the time. But in rare instances, the Fed goes so crazy that they jack rates up above the 10-year Treasury. What historically has happened after that happens? When this occurs, this gray area, shaded area, is recession. And then the Fed is forced to backpedal and say, oh, we went too far. And here they took the Fed funds rate from 10 to 3. Well, the 10-year Treasury followed. The second time they did it, similar. Fed went too far. They brought the Fed funds rate above the 10-year Treasury, and then they had to cut. And the 10-year Treasury followed. Third instance, similar thing. And notice, right after they did it, recession. Here again, recession, and rates had to drop. Here's where we are today. But what's interesting about this is the largest spread that we have ever seen in history. So let's apply mortgage rates to this. Same chart. Here's the first instance. What did mortgage rates do? Went from 11 to 7.5. The second time, they went from 8.5 to 5.5. The third time, 7 to 4.5. Here, 3.5 to 2.5. And here's where we are now. Where will we head? I think there's good news on the horizon. I think we are going to see mortgage rates drop, the 10-year drop. And even though the Fed says they're not going to cut rates for a while, it's going to happen sooner than we think. And there is a short position in the 10-year Treasury of $600 billion. That means people, hedge funds, they're betting that the 10-year Treasury price will get worse and yields will go up. Why is that important for us? Because if you want to make money in a stock, you buy the stock, you think, oh, it's going to go up. I want to buy the stock. But what if you think the stock price is going to go down? How do you make money? Well, you don't want to buy it. You want to sell it, but you don't have it. So how do you sell what you don't have? You borrow shares. You pay interest on borrowing it. So you borrow those shares. Now, remember, you have to give them back. You have to replace them. So you're literally short those shares. That's why this is called shorting. You sell the shares you don't have, and that's what hedge funds have done to a record $600 billion. But remember, they're short those shares. They have to eventually buy them back. So if we see a couple of bad job reports, if we see the Fed flinch and say they're going to start cutting, you will see a big move in the opposite direction quickly, just like you've seen in the past where you could see rates drop pretty quickly. So I want to give you hope that that's going to happen.